Ochify the game business podcast.
I'm Yuichi Ochi, also known as Ochify, a veteran uncle with about 20 years in the game industry, mainly on the business side. I'll be sharing my thoughts and analysis based on industry news and stories I have seen and heard. In this coming era, I believe it is more important to view the world from your own unique perspective rather than just knowing information. This program aims to provide better insights to everyone involved in business. Talking only about serious stuff gets tiring, so, well, my friends call me the B-grade gourmet king of East Asia. Well, basically, I'm a glutton, so I will also be sharing gourmet information that I have personally experienced. This time, I'll be analyzing the Steam rankings for November and analyzing the presentation materials from an activist investor pointing out Square Enix's management issues, which came out on December 10th. And in the Gourmet Corner, I went to Hakodate recently, so I'll talk about its charms. We will look at the sales ranking of games released on Steam in November 2025, referring to data from Game Discover Co. I'll put the link in the description, so please check it out if you're interested. This month is, well, it's quite unique again, or rather than indies, it feels like major titles that are definitely out to sell, are standing out in terms of overall sales volume. For example, there are 13 titles that have sold over 100,000 units. In October, there were 17 titles, and the highest one is around 550,000 units. October had, well, Battlefield was there, so yeah, that was like 7.16 million units. Yeah, there were like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 titles that went over 1 million. So November doesn't have that. And what I find interesting is, well, there are 3 racing games in there, and Japanese titles are in there too, within the top 10, and there's a Webtoon one too. Okay, let's look from the top. Number 1 is Europa Universalis VAV, a grand strategy game, the early access version of Paradox's historical strategy game. It seems to be selling the most in the US, about 20%, and next is Call of Duty Black Ops 7, the latest entry in the popular FPS series. This one, China accounts for about 40%. FPS is really popular in China, isn't it? And third place is Sega's Football Manager 26. As expected, this is, Europe, Germany, then China in that order in terms of popularity. And number 4 is Anno 117, Pax Romana, the latest city building simulation from Ubisoft. Then at number 5, it's finally out, the Extraction FPS Escape from Tarkov. Battlestate Games, well, the talked about title. Russia, China, US, all combined make up about 40% maybe. And number 6 is our own Japan, Inazuma 11 Victory Road. The latest Inazuma 11 is here. It sells in Spain and France. Well, it's a soccer game after all. I get it. Well, this is Steam. It's probably different on other platforms, though. And next to this, number 7 is the action game Solo Leveling Arise, released by Netmarble. This is a webtoon, right? Netmarble is in the production committee for the anime of this, I believe, and well, they invested accordingly, made the game, and it sold accordingly. Yes. And 8th place is a Assetto Corsa Rally. And after this, at 14th place is NASCAR 25. And 10th, 20th place. Project Motor Racing comes in at 20th place, so 3 of them come in like this. I watched the movies for all of these. Well, yeah, Project Motor Racing, Assetto Corsa Rally, Assetto Corsa Rally. I love rally games, so I'm this seems like it just started, so I think there will naturally be additions. But regarding car models, there are European cars, and, maybe Hyundai was there. Japanese cars, inevitably, I'm from the Sega Rally generation. So Celica, Lancia Delta, that's already in Assetto Corsa. For example, after that, like Subaru or Mitsubishi, those kinds of Japanese rally masterpieces, I want them to be included. Well, they'll probably be added eventually. But for these kinds of games, you need at least 3 monitors, right? And, you end up buying that steering wheel thing. Man, it must be fun. So, like that, I've zipped through the major ones and racing games. But besides those, for indies, coming in at 15th is a Chinese strategy simulation called Mandate of Heaven. Well, and that co-op cooking action, it seems like these kinds of things are popular lately too. Is it read Resto Rats? A slapstick co-op action game where rats run a restaurant. It has roguelike elements. And then a Japanese title, yes, coming in at 18th is Chill With You, Lo-Fi Study, a Work With Me adventure, a tool-come-adventure game to concentrate on work with a girl while listening to lo-fi music. It's out from Nestopi. It sold 139,400 copies. China 80%, US 5%, others 17%. Indie titles have become a world where it's all about selling in China. The user base is huge after all. And since they play a lot of games, they are really greedily looking for various things. I want to investigate this area a bit more if I can, like how games spread and such. Here it's not exactly a huge studio, but they were able to earn a certain amount with this. Indeed, indies have dreams. So that was the Steam ranking.
Ochify, the Game Business Podcast.
By the way, today I am broadcasting from the room where my Ochify's office is located in Shibuya, Tokyo. So, you might hear knocking on the door or people's voices, but please forgive that as part of the flavor.
Ochify, the Game Business Podcast.
Now, the next topic is the presentation material from an activist called 3D Investment Partners, pointing out Square Enix's management issues, which was released on December 10th. It has 112 pages. It was a document saying, "We want to make a proposal as a shareholder. It seems they hold about 10% of the shares now. And, overall it's divided into about 5 parts. The 5th is the conclusion. Since it's a listed company, the important thing is basically required to be earning properly, increasing sales and increasing profits. But the talk isn't Square Enix failing to do that recently? Operating income went from 59.2 billion yen in fiscal year 2021 to 32.5 billion yen in 2022 fiscal year 2024. So about 40% decrease or something. sales are at negative growth, 5%, while others like Capcom and Konami are positive, and so on. Operating income margin for competitors averages 27.5%, whereas Square Enix is 11%, less than half, and so on. Also, well, regarding the game business, there are two parts, the so-called home/PC games and the smartphone business, and the talk is like neither is going well, right? Or aren't costs too high? Or overseas sales aren't growing, stuff like that. The fourth part is capital policy, organizational structure. Yes, this area is out of my expertise, so I'll pass. As a conclusion, naturally, it was talk like review the medium-term management plan again, or make more money with games. And looking through this document, well, basically, since it's a document proposing do something, there are many severe opinions. I also personally thought, from about 3 years ago, that things might get tough for Square Enix. If you ask why, well, as pointed out in this document, after all, each individual game isn't selling as much as expected, I think. And what was pointed out in this document is, for example, stories like games aren't selling on Steam and such. Well, this area of title strategy and the part about actually making interesting games, it's simple to say in one word, but it's a very difficult part, isn't it? No, really, to do this as an organization, spending tens of billions of yen in development costs and getting a return that greatly exceeds that. And the interesting thing about the game business is the costs don't necessarily grow in proportion to the sales. So once you cross a certain threshold, the profit margin goes up tremendously. But well, there are patterns where that doesn't happen, so it is said to be a business with high volatility, and development costs keep going up, and right now, truly for a Square Enix class company, it's over 10 billion yen. Well, I don't think 10 billion is enough, but really spending tens of billions of yen on development means, well, how many do you have to sell? You have to sell 5 million or 10 million copies, or it doesn't become a profitable business, right? Planning that, and properly managing costs to do it. Well, there are companies that are actually managing to do this. The successful patterns of other companies are like that. The comparison in this document is largely with competitors in the same industry, especially many comparisons with Capcom. And, well, it was quite a while ago, but I was at Capcom, so while remembering what we were doing back then, or the way of thinking, well, looking at the information in this document primarily, looking at this info on Square Enix, what I think is, well, first as a company, well, the titles that sell the IPs, simply put, are Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. And the issue is, first, Dragon Quest doesn't sell that much outside of Japan. And, well, in Japan and Asia, it's popular, so they are using it to release various things, and recently remakes and smartphone titles too. And I think they are naturally making the latest entry, but whether this will sell in regions outside of Japan, well, sales will either grow or not depending on that, so that's quite the key point, but what kind of direction can they hammer out for that? Regarding Final Fantasy, for the new works and remakes in the last few years, the customer evaluation hasn't been as high as expected, so in response to that, after all, here, they have to make things that meet the customer's expectations. So, whether they can make interesting games, and whether they can conduct precise management as a business in response to that. This is, well, very simply put, 2 points, but where and how do you start addressing that? I think there's that aspect. But, well, naturally, the start is the title plan, I suppose. Well, for example, any company has a plan for some number of years, and they think we will release this title in 5 years or 3 years, plan it, and say, with this much cost, the sales forecast is about this much. Tell that to management, get approval there, and proceed. I think any game company takes that approach, but first, it's that line drawing. But simply, well, something like game sales forecasting, inevitably, in relation to development costs, it's like, we have to earn this much, or we can't recoup, how should I put it, creating cooked numbers. It's difficult with just information inside the company. For example, looking at how much similar games are selling in the market, doing things like that to raise accuracy. But, how much of that are they doing inside Square Enix? Also, naturally, in the case of this kind of, big, cost-heavy game development, there's the question of how to hedge risk. Well, at that time, then, there are various platforms like PlayStation, Steam, Nintendo, well, regarding which platform to prioritize. That involves the relationship values with each other or the compatibility of the game. But, well, simply speaking in terms of logic, if you sell on all of them, the business is maximized. So whether they can aim for that and do it, well, it's not simple, right? And that turning of the tide I've been talking about recently. For example, right now, well, as I said earlier, so-called game development at big companies is already on a scale of 10 billion yen, or, well, and there are ones going up to about 100 billion Japanese yen. Well, there are cases where the result is recouping this properly, but there are cases where that's not so it's becoming harder to take risks. And on the other hand, just because you spend cost doesn't mean it will sell. So there are indie games on Steam that sell just on the fun of the game without spending that much cost. Well, thinking about that situation, simply put, it's becoming difficult to make it work as a business, and the old way of doing things is probably difficult. And probably the important thing is intelligence, like not we'll make a new installment of something, this will probably sell, but rather like for the new installment of something, originally this series had this gameplay that was well received by customers. So looking at the current market, it's like this. So we will do it this way, and this way, and we will do the selling method like this. Thinking about the selling method together when developing and starting, I heard that Chinese companies are doing this, even with specific game examples. Well, I think Square Enix hasn't been able to successfully catch up with that kind of game business approach adapted to the changes of the times. Well, I talk big, but you might think, then you try doing it, but no, wait, well, it's tough, isn't it? Saying it is easy. Doing it in reality is difficult. Right. Well, but having been at Capcom, well, I didn't see everything, but if you ask what's amazing about Capcom, well, there are various things, but to say it in one word, the level of management is extremely high. How to verbalize this more is difficult, though. The organization, well, so that it proceeds in a certain direction, well, the organization and the people inside it, well, even if something is lacking, they cover it with human movement, or somehow as an organization, it's an organization that can solidly move foolishly, honestly in a certain direction. This is, after all, something I didn't understand the amazingness of when I was at Capcom, but indeed you understand it when you quit and go to other companies. Ideally, it's a bit difficult to verbalize describing it in more detail, though. Yeah. Also, but, they are merchants, basically. They haven't forgotten that selling games is a business. And, well, on top of that, after all, to sell a lot, to make a lot of profit, they make interesting things, make things that people of the world will be happy with. We will make the best thing in the world. I think it's that basic philosophy that hasn't wavered. It's a bit unorganized, but, well, that's about it. If anyone wants to hear this story in detail, if you invite me to dinner, I'll talk about as much as the meal you treat me to. Yes. Well, it's only what I experienced, though. What I experienced, or rather what I saw and felt, well, I think I can share that. Well, maybe that might, depending on your position or thoughts or situation, become useful information, so I am waiting for your contact.
Ochify the Game Business Podcast.
Yes, relax time. It's the Gourmet Information Corner. At the end of November, I went to Hakodate, Hokkaido. I've passed through by train, but it was my first time getting off and staying. Well, this was also due to a certain connection that I ended up going. Well, you eat dinner, right? The dishes using fish at the izakaya Japanese pub are delicious. Cod milt, shirako, matsumaizuke, pickled squid, and kelp. You can eat these in Tokyo too, specifically, but the freshness of the cod milt is completely different. I was surprised by this. It's a completely different thing. People from Sapporo were saying it too. It's tastier than Sapporo. Oh, is that so? Right. Also, regarding Ekiben, train station bento, near Hakodate, there is a station called Mori, and the Mori no Ikameshi, squid rice from Mori, from there often appears in Ekiben fairs, national Ekiben fairs and such. So I always buy it. I love Ikameshi. The hotel I happened to stay at this time, it was Hoshino Resort Omo, but for a limited time, Ikameshi comes out at the morning buffet. And it's warm. I want to eat this for breakfast every day. I could eat it for about 360 days out of the year. It was truly delicious to that extent. I felt happiness. After all, we are human. Once your stomach is grabbed, it's over. I think I'll go again soon.
Ochify the Game Business Podcast.
Yes, it's the ending. I think this will probably be the last podcast of this year. So, well, it's not like I'm particularly looking back or anything, but, well, I did various things. And I just want to share one thing. On December 12th, there is a town called Tobecho, south of Matsuyama in Ehime Prefecture. It's a town of Tobeyaki pottery. At the Matsuyama Minami High School Toby branch there, a game creation course was established starting this year, a course aiming to become game creators. And due to a connection, the other day I spoke about work in the game industry in front of 80 students there. Well, I want to do game work. Not that much. There are various levels of intensity like that. But what was impressive was that the kids who like games are really deep into indie games and such. Also, well, the things they like are very, well, unique, or maybe like 90s Japanese cars. Well, it's a good era, right? There's so much information so they can enjoy that. Well, anyway, like when they are high schoolers, after all, they are often told things like, what should I do while I can now? I thought it was a very honor student-like question. Well, yeah, they want to know that kind of answer, I think. But, well, knowing the answer is meaningless, though, in conclusion. So, since I was asked something similar the other day, too, I talked about master your current likes. So the kid who likes cars should master cars. And regarding indie games, since that girl said she likes visual novels, starting with Coffee Talk, you should just dive deep into that and try analyzing in your own way why you think this is interesting and this is not interesting, or why this sells or doesn't sell. I talked about things like that. Well, I said some sounding great things like that, but after all, speaking in front of people like that, I myself, me speaking, learn the most. Like that atmosphere or whatever. Like, yes, understanding what kind of vibe high schoolers are doing it with is also useful information for me. So I think I'll probably be invited again next year, so I'm looking forward to it. So, yes, as a closing greeting, please give me your feedback, X at Ochiyuichi. This content is wrong. No, I want to say this to you. If there is anything like that, please point it out. And, well, I want you to talk about this kind of story. If there is anything like that, I would like to ask for it. And, well, next time will be the New Year special. I wonder what is special about it. But, well, I've been doing only serious content, so I'm thinking maybe I can talk a bit more about myself, Ochify, Yuichi Ochi himself, so I'm thinking of doing that around New Year's. Yes, there might be people who say listening to such a person's, an old man's life story isn't fun, but, well, those people can skip it. Again, yes, into the new year. Everyone have a happy new year. Stay insightful.
Stay.